On Across an Arrow, Chapter 7, In My Beautiful Balloon.
Rainbow Dash yawned in a bored manner. True, this was at least 10 times better than staying inside the cramped quarters of the hedge, but it was still boring work. She had no idea how these royal bodyguards did it. The Pegasus was nestled deep in the clump of bushes that made up their hideout's roof. Guard duty was something they had all agreed on the first thing that morning. The majority of them were convinced that Dusk was going to try again today, and it was Rainbow's job to watch out for him, giving the mares inside ample time to barricade the entrance before he got close enough to do any serious probing. So far, though, the day had been uneventful. Nothing but birds, trees, and the occasional rabbit which Dash still hid from, in the off chance that said rabbit was Angel or Angelica. Whichever.
This is getting old. I'm gonna fall asleep at this rate. Maybe I should have Fluttershy take a turn. Yeah, she could watch and I'll grab a quick nap before taking over again. That sounds like a plan.
The Pegasus righted herself, giving a lazy stretch to all her limbs, before giving another glance across the surrounding area. Nothing but grass and greenery for miles around. Wait. A speck of color caught her eye, coming from the direction of Ponyville. Her wings shot up in alert, her eyes concentrating on the spot. It was coming closer. She dug herself deeper into the bushes, secluding her body as best she could. Soon, she could make out the shape of the approaching form. It was a pony, all right, and it was bouncing? Her eyes kept their watch. The pony's course was not changing in the slightest. It looked like they were going to pass within a few yards of the hedge. She began to realize that as the equine approached, its colors were becoming more distinct. Bit by bit, Dash's face began to devolve into an expression of anguish as she realized that coat was not a lavender hue, but a bright shade of bubblegum pink. She was also chagrined to find that as the form became clearer, her wings began to stiffen, deploying themselves against her will.
Celestia, damn it! Why do you want?
There was a yipe from a yellow pony as their watchmare suddenly exploded into the hedge.
Billy's.
Her face wide and panicked, but her voice oddly even and calm.
We've got a situation on our hooves.
Instantly, Twilight and Applejack rushed to her side, Rarity hanging back and watching from a distance. Fluttershy cowered behind her, while Pinkie remained undisturbed, a bubble issuing from her snout as she snoozed.
Dusk? Is he back?
It's not Dusk. It's worse.
Worse?
The apple farmer briefly removed her hat to skirt her mane.
What can be worse than a stallion who can't help poking his nose around where it don't belong?
Here, riddle me this.
The Pegasus was apparently trying to make light of the situation, though her expression said it was anything but.
What's bouncy, bubbly, makes cupcakes for a living, more than likely has a pet alligator, is at least 6 shades of pink, is known for being completely unpredictable, and still hasn't met his female self yet.
All eyes directed themselves towards the back, where a party pony napped peacefully. A split second later, Rainbow, Applejack, and Twilight crammed themselves around the cave's entrance, their pupils shrinking into specks as the intruder bounced closer.
Sweet Celestia's mane.
The student swore. She would have to apologize to her mentor later. The colt was built almost as lightly as a filly, though his squared-off snout left little doubt that he was male, despite his bright pink coat and curled cherry dew. On his flank was a familiar trio of blue and yellow balloons. He had his eyes closed, bouncing along quite happily, humming a song to himself. For all intents and purposes, he had no idea of the group of fillies nearby who were scared to death of his existence. He was not going to pass too far off. As far as they knew, he was on his way to meet the local version of Zecora, or maybe he was going to pick berries. Who could tell? This was Pinkie Pie's male reflection they were dealing with. They grew very, very quiet as the pony hopped along in front of them. For a second, it looked like he was going to pass, and they could all relax. Right up until his eyes popped open in surprise, orbs as blue as his devils. He stopped in midair, dropping to the ground and stood still, staring into space for a second. And then his hind legs kicked out behind him, seemingly held in place by an invisible force, before they began rotating madly, wheels of pink spinning in the air. The 3 watching mares heard the shriek behind them, and turned their heads just in time to see Pinkie Pie jolted awake, her body shooting itself to her feet. Her bright blue eyes widened in surprise as her hind legs kicked themselves out, before performing windmills at record speed.
No! No! No, 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 no! There can't be! Sweet Celestia, there can't be a Pinkie sense for that!
The stallion's hindhooves ceased their spinning. He waited for a second before his forehooves repeated the process, stretching out in front of him, rapidly turning in place like a stroke-swimming pony on coffee. Pinkie's look of detached confusion continued as her own front limbs began swinging in the air as well, accidentally knocking an apple off the table.
Oops! Sorry about that!
He found himself standing on all fours again. Blinking, he began looking back and forth, trying to see if... Suddenly, his entire body bounced off the ground before he began spinning in place, a tornado in miniature forming quickly. His mane and tail colored the vortex a deep pink. Fluttershy and Rarity backed themselves up against the other three as their pink friend became a pony-sized dust devil, blankets and tablecloths whipping about in the wind. Applejack's look of pure terror remained as she kept glancing back and forth between the convulsing pony outside and the convulsing pony inside. A longtime believer of the twitchy tale, this display of Pinkie sense of this size was painting a brand new stripe of respect and fear for her perpetually cheerful friend into the farmer's mind.
Who'd have known she'd have a doozy of this magnitude in her?
Pinkie, stop! You're gonna give us away!
She can't help it! This is it! This is the end of us all!
Just as suddenly as it started, the stallion's body screeched to a halt in midair. Slowly, he descended like a feather, hooves alighting on the ground with nary a scratch. He stood there for a full 30 seconds, eyes wide and blinking, waiting to see if anything else would happen. When nothing did, he finally opened his mouth.
Wow! That was a new one!
Wow!
Pinkie's feet touched the floor, the area surrounding her a scene of only minor devastation.
I've never felt that one before!
She then opped as she found herself the target of an impromptu pony pile, all 5 ponies stacking themselves on top of her, restraining her as best they could.
Pinkie, stay quiet. One of them is out there.
Oh? I don't hear Spines complaining. Is it some pony else?
Y'all could say that. Just keep yourself still and quiet. If you're lucky, he'll go away.
Who will?
The pie's eyes were wide and curious, apparently not minding being held motionless. Twilight opened her mouth as if to answer, but some pony else spoke instead.
Hello?
Instantly, every pony in the cave stayed very, very still.
Is there any pony in there? I mean, if there isn't any pony in there, I understand, but you see, my berry sense just kind of freaked out right about now, and it usually doesn't do that unless something is about to happen, and I thought I heard some pony yelling over there, and usually whenever my berry sense goes off and there's yelling close by, that usually means there's another pony somewhere around here, so I was curious to know if any pony was around here yelling stuff, but if there's not, then that's totally, absolutely, positively okay.
Wow, if I'd been alone and had that Pinkie sense happen to me, that's what I would have said.
Hey, if there is some yelling pony in there, want to come with me to Ponyville and have a party? I know every pony in Ponyville, and if you're a new pony, that means you're new, and I've never seen you before, and I always throw a welcome new pony to Ponyville party whenever we have a new pony in Ponyville.
The pink filly's eyes had begun to sparkle.
Don't listen to him, Pinkie! Fluttershy, grab her ears!
Oh, by the way, my name is Berry Bubble. Usually ponies call me Berry or Bubbly or Random, though I don't know why they call me that last one. I mean, it's not even my name. If you ask my folks, they'll tell you my name is Berry Smander Da Vinci Bubble, but that's kind of long and boring, ain't it? I've never known another pony have gotten such a long and boring name like mine.
Oh my gosh, me neither!
Pinkie and Diane Pie practically shouted in her skull, loud enough for Rarity to give her a funny look.
But hey, enough about boring old Berry me.
The stallion continued speaking to the shrubbery, completely ignorant to the trio of bunnies that had gathered to watch him, wondering if the pink pony had lost his sanity.
If there is some pony in there, won't you come out and say hi? I've got a lot of friends I'd like you to meet. Oh, and we can have a party and say hi to you.
Really?
Pinkie had a grin on her face. Instantly, her friends pressed down harder on her.
We can eat cake and cupcakes and muffins and meringue and have lots and lots of pie.
The grin creeped wider across her mouth as those eyes began to shrink in excitement.
We can drink sugar tea and sugar soda and have sugar canes with sundaes and sunrays and sarsaparilla.
He's going on like the gala. No, Pinkie, you can't. You'll doom us all if you do.
And we'll have games like Pinatas and Spin the Bottle and Twister.
The frizzy-maned pony's face hurt, that grinning expression reaching from ear to ear.
And my most favoriteest of favorite fun games?
Pinkie's eyes began to cross as she giddily awaited the words she knew she was going to hear.
Pin the tail on the pony!
The 5 mares weren't exactly sure what happened. They hadn't even blinked. 1 second, they had their impulsively perky friend thoroughly restrained at every limb. The second after that, they all went oof as they fell into the space that had been previously occupied by a party-loving pony. Barry was caught quite by surprise as a pink, fluffy-haired filly suddenly leapt out of the clump of bushes that he had been talking to, screaming,
Pin the tail on the pony! Mine too!
He stared at her, taking her in as she landed. She kept a goofy smile on her face before his presence finally registered in her brain, her expression suddenly taking on a mirror image look of surprise. There was a scuffle inside the hedge as every pony clamored to get a good look at what was going on outside. Dash made a motion to dive out there and drag Pinkie back in, but was restrained with a tail tug from Applejack in the last minute.
We don't want to make things any worse.
Worse, there's 2 Pinkie Pies out there. We've already reached that point.
Shush!
Barry blinked. Pinkie blinked back. They zoomed into each other, honking noses, trading soul-searching gazes. They craned their heads to the side, looking at each other's cutie mark before looking back at their own, and then back again, recognizing the resemblance. They zoomed in circles, looking at each other's tails. In synchronous motions, they twitched their tails side to side. They backed up into each other, their manes compressing as the backs of their heads met. Each one reached a hoof back to poke at the other's hair. They assumed a very compromising position, yin-yang style, with Pinkie laying on her back as she inspected her double's hindquarters. Barry standing above her as his eyes examined her own haunches. Finally, they resumed their original poses, standing in front of each other, blinking, with surprised looks on their faces. They held this for a few seconds before they reared up, smiles blossoming on both their faces as they spoke in stereo.
Hi, my name's...
Pinkie waved a hoof at him.
You go.
He did.
Hi, my name's Barry Bubble, and I love to throw parties.
Hi, Berry Bubble. My name's Pinkie Pie, and I love to throw parties too.
Hi, Pinkie Pie. Oh my gosh, really? Me too. I especially love all the candy and the streamers and the dance music.
And the fruit punch and the decorations and the party games, those are always so awesome.
They pointed hooves at each other as they once more spoke at the same time.
Hey, can I call you Pinkie? Sure you can. So, want to go have a party?
I'd love to go have a party. Where at? Oh, want to go to Sugar Cube Corner?
Are you kidding? I practically live there. Actually, I do live there because I work for the cakes too, you know, and they're really super nice ponies for letting me do so. I mean, I can help make cupcakes and croissants and cakes and crumbles, and did I already mention cupcakes? I think it's the perfect place for a party. Yeah, let's go to Sugar Cube Corner.
Oh my gosh, really? Me too. Let's go to Sugar Cube Corner.
Yeah!
And with that, Barry turned around and began to hop in the opposite direction, back towards Ponyville. Only this time, he was accompanied by a new friend, a bubblegum mare that alternated bouts right beside him, as full as energy and cheer as himself. And that's how Equestria was unmade.
We've got to do something.
I know we need to do something.
Why are we doing anything? Because we're yelling.
Why are we yelling?
Girls!
Twilight interjected herself between Applejack and Rainbow Dash, hooves pushing the quarreling ponies apart.
Get a hold of yourselves! This is no time to panic!
Twilight, you're one to talk. If there ever was a time to panic, this is it.
Excuse me, but...
We've done gone unleash the ponypocalypse on Equestria.
The sheer amount of terror in her voice drowning out her accent.
2 Pinkie Pies? We can barely handle one. What are they gonna do with 2 of them?
I should be able to get her back. Nothing big. Just zoom out there, scoop her up, and hightail it back here, and I'll get it done in 10.
No, Rainbow! We can't have you flying in broad daylight. Ponies will see you, and then we'll have an incident like the day before last.
Twilight, if you'd...
Well, some pony has to go out there.
Rarity looked furtively back and forth between the exit and her friends.
I mean, I'd be more than willing to go, but I don't know if you really...
Nuh-uh. Don't think I forgot about yesterday. You're staying put. End of discussion.
But Twilight!
End of discussion.
Then that leaves just me and Fluttershy. We can do this, Sugar Cube. I'll head him off at the pass and get Pinkie lassoed up and hogtied. You just keep her colt friend busy while we drag her back.
Twilight!
A voice rarely heard raised, tending to get noticed. Every pony quieted down as they directed their attention towards the yellow pony.
Yes, Fluttershy?
She looked down, cheeks tinted at her outburst.
Not that the situation with Pinkie isn't bad, but we've also got another problem.
She looked to the white rabbit sitting by her side as she bit her lip. Wait. The white rabbit.
For Pete's sake! Every pony, I'd like for you to meet Angela. She slipped in here during all the confusion, and she is rather adamant about going back out there and telling Butterscotch about us, so...
The white mare rolled her eyes, her horn lit as she probed in her saddlebags to see if she'd packed a cage.
Not that I don't blame the little darling, but could she wait until later? Now's really not the best time.
That's what I've been trying to tell her, but...
Fluttershy winced as the lapine tapped her with an impatient hind leg.
She just won't listen to reason.
Twilight had had enough of these horse apples. Her horn lit up, and Applejack had to jump as their makeshift pantry suddenly shapeshifted into a hutch. Without ceremony, Angela was levitated, tossed into the enclosure, and locked in. The bunny gave her a glare full of daggers in return.
That's another day gone. Thanks to that.
Twilight's head throbbed from the exertion. Or frustration. She couldn't tell at this point, and she didn't care.
Fluttershy, I charge you with guard duty. Applejack.
She turned away from a shocked Pegasus towards the earth pony.
Gear up. You're going after Pinkie Pie. Every minute we wait is another minute where she's free to do as much damage to this world as she wants, without even realizing it.
I'm on it, Twilight.
The orange equine reared up as she tilted her hat forward, stomping toward the hedge exit.
I'll have her back in 2 shakes of a pony's tail.
And where do you think you're going dressed like that?
Rarity interjected herself in front of Applejack, blocking her path.
You're well aware that before you even step foot outside, we must have you adorned in disguise, correct?
The Applebucker sputtered before glaring in consternation.
Disguises? We ain't got no time for disguises, Rarity. If I'm to make any time to catch them two or they blow up Ponyville, I need to make like a tree and drop apples.
While I agree with you on principle, Rarity, I have to side with Applejack with this one.
Twilight looked from behind the blonde pony, giving the dressmaker a look.
We simply don't have time to properly guise her up on the level we would do for a shopping excursion.
Oh, don't worry, my dears.
The white mare beamed a smile at her compatriots before casting her eyes on a folded dress in the corner.
What I have in mind won't take long at all.
It's a beautiful day in Ponyville today, though I must admit, every day will seem gray and cloudy now that she is no longer in my life.
He had been on his way to the Luxury Lotus Spa for his usual meetup with Butterscotch. He really needed it today, he felt. Having your soulmate wrested away from you after a single day of togetherness had worn on him hard. And according to the words, however wild they sounded, of his friends, his Pegasus friend had recently undergone a similar ordeal. Today, he would cover the cost of both his and his friends' sessions. Never mind that they were already given discounts for being about the only males in town who openly visited the establishment. Ponies say what they will about the two colts. He would hear none of it. The spa was a wonderful place to relax, and Alex and Lexi were always such joys to be around. And he had to admit, the masseur that usually gave his special quake hoof had a certain charm about them.
Hi, Elusive! Bye, Elusive!
The stallion had to bring himself up short as a pink colt bounced right into his path, and then right back out, his constant cheerful manner bubbling as always. It took a second for his heart to recover itself. A relieved smile spread across his muzzle as he reminded himself that it was just Barry being Barry, as he was usually wont to do.
Hi, pony who looks just like my best friend Rarity! Bye, pony who looks just like my best friend Rarity!
His heart did stop this time, as a Philly-flavored afterimage of his friend landed right in front of him, before continuing on, following close behind the original. The two of them were bouncing towards Sugar Cube Corner. Dusk's words from last night now resurfaced in his head.
Two berry bubbles. Oh my goodness, oh my stars. Oh, sweet Solaris.
With a hoof to his forehead, Elusive's eyes rolled back as he fainted dead right away there on the street. A jangle of the door sounded behind Mrs. Cake as she put the last of the carrot and raisin muffins into the display case. A cross-eyed customer watching the scene with rapt attention.
Oh, hello.
Her eyes weren't really directed towards the newcomer.
Hi, Mrs. Cake.
Her eyes simply smiled as she recognized the voice, its pink source bouncing past her into the kitchen.
Welcome home, dear.
Hi, Mrs. Cake.
Yet another cheerful reply rang out, noticeably higher pitched than the first, its pink source bouncing past her into the kitchen.
Welcome, dearie.
She automatically replied, closing the door to the display counter and turning to pick up a tray of meringue cookies, when her eyes shot open in realization.
Did I just greet Barry twice?
There was a clop of hooves as the bright yellow pony galloped to the kitchen door. As she looked inside, she had to restrain from letting her jaw hit the floor. For inside of her store, there were a pair of pink ponies that were happily hopping about on the floor, following each other in circles, for no apparent reason other than for the pure sake of hopping. Two ponies that seemed nigh indistinguishable from each other in terms of color and energy, save that one was obviously a mare.
But Barry, who's this? Did you find a new friend?
The colt and filly ceased their antics as they faced the shop owner with a smile.
Hi, Mrs. Cake. Yes, indeedly I did. This is Pinkie Pie, Mrs. Cake, and she's my newest and bestest friend in Ponyville.
Hi, Mrs. Cake.
The strange filly leapt into the air in a manner disturbingly similar to Barry's.
I've heard a lot about Sugar Cube Corner and I always wanted to come visit, but I've been busy being kept in a cave, so I haven't had a chance until now to visit. I'm so glad to finally see the place, even if it may be like I have seen it all before, but that would be silly. It's not like I thought of a dimension that's just like this one, save that every pony's genders are opposite, right?
Pinkie was aware that she should be holding her existence a secret. She was trying. It just wasn't working very well. She had forgotten to Pinkie Pie swear on it, after all.
Right.
Her eyes quickly flicked from one pink pony to the other.
She's a new pony in Ponyville, so I'm going to throw her one of my special berry-rific berry bubble bashes to give her a proper welcome. It's going to be super spectacular.
The colt was waving his hooves in the air.
Wow! Now that I think of it, I've never had a welcome new pony to Ponyville party thrown just for little old Pinkie me. Oh, I bet we can combine your berry-rific berry bubble bash with my patent-pending Pinkie-licious Pinkie Pie party. It'd be super-duper spectacular!
What a great idea! It'll be amazing! The most amazingly amazingest Mazy Maze that ever amazed!
The duo then brought their heads together as their curled manes pressed up against each other. The following left their mouths in stereo.
It'll be the biggest and bestest and most amazingest party in all of Equestria!
Slowly, Mrs. Cake backed up through the door, her eyes not leaving the scene of the twin plotting party ponies as they continued animatedly chatting to one another.
I'll get the balloons!
And I'll get the streamers!
I'll get the food!
I'll get the hot sauce!
I'll get the invitations!
I'll get the games!
The elderly mare pressed herself up against the wall next to the door with panicked eyes as their list went on.
I'll get the cupcakes!
I'll get the ribbons!
I'll get the punch!
I'll get the live band!
And I'll get the alligators!
Great! It's not a party without Gummy!
Is that everything we need?
I don't think so, though you can never tell. Let's add anything else we can think of along the way.
There was a mess of giggling that made Mrs. Cake want to run her hooves through her red mane. She then proceeded to yipe as Barry leapt out of the kitchen in his usual bouncing manner, Pinkie right beside him.
See ya, Mrs. Cake. Me and Pinkie are gonna go shopping for our party. Oh, we need to remember the piñatas.
Yeah, and the sugar cubes and sugar canes and the sundaes and sunrays
And sarsaparilla!
At this point, the corner's few present patrons were openly staring at the shocking, not to mention frightening, display of pink.
We'll be back soon, Mrs. Cake. When we get back, we're gonna have a party so big, every pony in Ponyville will be invited. See you soon.
With that, the two ponies bounced their way out the door unimpeded.
Hey, a pony who looks like Miss Linky. Oh, hi, pony who looks like Ditsy Doo. Be safe delivering the mail today.
A silence followed after their departure, no pony making any movements for a full minute, waiting to see if they would return. At length, the blonde-haired Pegasus colt that had been single-eyeing the muffins before, slowly turned to the store proprietor.
Should I call the mayor?
Not yet, Derpy. I mean, Barry's always been a kind soul.
Mrs. Cake tried to sound more reassuring than she actually felt.
It's just that sweet honey buns with icing, that filly he found. She's an absolute match to him, if she's his new filly friend.
Both the gray stallion and yellow mare shared a shiver.
Then may Solaris help us all.
Derpy looked back at the door for a few seconds, brows knitted in thought, before his eyes snapped open. Apparently, the scene with the pink equines had distracted him enough to forget the purpose of his visit. Turning to the baker again, he simply stated,
Muffins.
Oh, yes! Sorry about that, dear. I'll get them right out to you.
She grabbed a pair of tongs and lifted out one of those freshly baked pastries, the customer's golden eyes alight with reverence as the thing was held aloft over a bag. The door jingled again. Apparently, her nerves were shot as the tongs slipped out of her lips. Muffins sent flying through the air. Disaster was averted, however. Derpy hadn't become mid-air snacker competition of Trottingham for nothing.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to disturb y'alls.
It's all right.
Mrs. Cake collected her wits as she made it back around the counter.
Hello, and welcome to Sugar Cube Corner. What can I get for... Oh, hey! I remember you. Hello again.
Hello?
The elderly mare wasn't sure, but there seemed to be a tint of nervousness to her voice. She was also certain that the bright yellow sundress that the freckled horse was wearing was a new addition as well.
Decided to come back, eh?
The baker found herself relaxing as she spoke.
Care for another cup of coffee? I've got a pot brewing in the back. It'll be a minute still.
Thank you for the offer, but that's not what I'm here for. Ma'am, I've got a mighty unusual question.
Go ahead, dear. Let's hear it.
Y'all wouldn't have happened to seen a friend of mine around here, would you? She kinda got away from me, and we've been looking all over Ponyville.
Oh?
The store owner felt a suspicion bubbling in the back of her mind.
Can you, describe her? I mean, we did see some pony new today, but, well, just to be sure.
The traveler's green eyes gave her a flat look.
She's pink.
Oh, thanks, Solaris.
Every pony in the store let out a whoosh of breath they didn't know they'd been holding.
Oh, we saw her. She's with Barry. Freakiest thing I've ever seen.
Barry Bubble is an employee of ours. He's a good soul, but has way too much energy in his body. And your friend, Pinkie Pie, right? She looks and acts essentially like a filly version of our Barry from what we've seen. It was all I could do to keep from calling for help the instant they entered the corner together.
Dang-nabbit, Pinkie. Where are they now? I think I can save Equestria from a party of apocalypse proportions if I can find them in time.
They went to the store, shopping for party supplies.
Thank you, Ditzy. Thank you, mister.
The traveling equine appeared to be tripping over her own tongue, cheeks blushing in frustration.
Sorry for not buying anything, but I need to run. Thank y'all, mister. Or Mrs. Cake.
Don't worry about it, hon. Good luck. We're counting on you.
The gaily dressed pony turned around and galloped out the door, bell jingling as it closed. Another pause of silence came and went, before the proprietor narrowed her eyes, dug her head back into the display case, and sat the tray full of muffins back on the counter.
I decree today to be Free Muffins Doomsday. Every pony dig in. We may not have a lot of time left before they return.
Muffins!
Derpy Doo cried out joyously, as he leapt into the air for a swan dive, the question of why he'd been called Ditzy twice having completely slipped his mind.
To be continued. Coming up next, on Across an Arrow Chapter 8, Over the Hills.
It's a mystery!
Pinkie bounced up between the two orange ones, Barry and Step behind her.
And one that you're going to have to wait for.
The farming colt gave Pinkie a look that said she just claimed she was a moon pony.
Really? How do y'all figure that?
Hawes, my hooves are itchy.
Instantly, Applejack's ears perked as she began scanning the ponies on the street.
And that means y'all have to chase us. Pinkie!
The blonde mare looked warily about with panic in her eyes.
You don't know anything about your sense. Why can't y'all keep your pie hole shut and let it all...
Dusk's Shine suddenly rounded about from behind a building's corner, spines on his back. His expression had been calm and content, at least up to when he spied the open-doored state of the joke shop. His purple eyes cast about the crowd, and instantly zoned in on her own green ones.